A bobber and worm setup is the most underrated rig in freshwater fishing, but most people are quietly sabotaging it with mistakes they don't even realize they're making. The worm goes on wrong. The bobber sits at the wrong depth. The hook is too big. Any one of those kills your chances before the fish even shows up. Even people who've been fishing this way for years are leaving fish in the water. The fix isn't complicated, but you have to know what you're actually doing wrong first. Worms work because fish are hardwired to eat them. Small, wriggling, defenseless, that's basically a dinner bell for anything swimming beneath your bobber. Trout, bluegill, bass, crappie, they all respond to a well-presented worm. The species list for this rig is genuinely long. The problem is the presentation part. Real quick, my name is Jake Watson. I have been an angler for over 20 years ever since I was a little kid when my father used to take me fishing. I have dedicated this channel to helping share my passion with like-minded anglers like me, as I plan to reveal every secret there is about fishing, taking it from a game of luck to an actual skill set. So it would mean a lot if you could like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Anyways, let's continue. The single biggest mistake most people make is using the whole night crawler. You throw that full worm on and it just hangs there in a limp, lifeless clump. Fish aren't impressed by volume. They want movement. A wriggling worm is far more attractive than something limp, and a whole crawler rarely wiggles the way you need it to. Cut it down. For trout and panfish, 2 to 4 inches is your sweet spot. Leave about an inch dangling off the hook so it actually moves in the water. Now, the hook. Most beginners go too big, thinking bigger hook means bigger fish. It mostly just means fewer bites and a worm that looks ridiculous on the rig. For panfish and trout, a size 6 to 10 hook is where you want to be. Small enough to hide in the bait, strong enough to hold when something actually takes it. Threading the worm matters too. Pierce it about ½ an inch from the tip, then slide it up the shank. Leave that tail end hanging loose below the bend. That tail is doing the work. It wiggles, it pulses, it looks alive. The moment you bury the whole worm on the hook, you've turned dinner into a lump of nothing. Next problem, the bobber depth. Most people set it and forget it, but fish aren't always at the same depth, and a bait hanging in empty water catches nothing. Start at 12 inches between the bobber and hook. If nothing's happening after a few minutes, slide the bobber up and give the bait more depth. Keep adjusting until you find them. In shallow water, 12 inches is usually enough. Deeper ponds and lakes, you might need to push that bobber up to 24 inches or beyond to reach where fish are holding. The cast itself is another place people go wrong. A hard snap cast sends the worm flying off the hook before it ever hits the water. You've basically just fed the air. Use a lob cast instead. Let about 2 to 3 feet of line hang from the rod tip, load it slowly, then swing smooth and release high. The worm stays on every time. Once that bobber is out there, the waiting game starts. And this is where impatience kills more catches than any gear mistake. People yank the rod at the first twitch. A twitch means a fish is mouthing the bait. That's curiosity, not commitment. Wait for the bobber to dip fully under or start moving sideways. That's your fish. Set it then. When you do set the hook, keep it smooth. A firm upward pull is all you need. Snap it too hard and you either pop the line or rip the hook clean through. Bait quality is something most people ignore completely. A dead, dried out worm sitting in a hot tackle box is not going to catch fish. Keep them cool and keep them alive. Dunk your worm in the water before you rig it if it's looking sluggish. A rehydrated worm moves again. Movement is the whole point of using live bait in the first place. Reading the water matters just as much as the rig. Cast towards structure, logs, weed edges, rocky points. Fish aren't randomly scattered. They're sitting somewhere specific, waiting for food to come to them. Get the depth right, rig the worm properly, cast smooth, and wait for the real bite. Every one of these mistakes is fixable today. Fix them all and the bobber goes under a lot more often. There's one piece of gear most people completely overlook, the line itself. Heavy line telegraphs the rig, and fish in clear water will turn away from it. 4 to 8 pound test monofilament is the range you want for most freshwater bobber fishing. Go heavier and you're working against yourself. Fluorocarbon is nearly invisible underwater. If you're fishing clear ponds or pressured lakes where fish have seen every rig in the tackle shop, it makes a real difference. Split shot weights are another thing people skip entirely. Without them, a light worm barely sinks and the whole rig drifts wherever the wind pushes it. Pinch 1 or 2 small split shots about 6 inches above the hook. That gets the bait down faster and keeps it where you actually want it sitting. Time of day matters more than most people admit. Early morning and late afternoon are when fish feed hardest. Midday, they go deep and slow down. If you're fishing at noon in summer and getting nothing, the fish aren't gone, they've just dropped deeper and gone quiet. Adjust depth or come back later. Spring rain is genuinely one of the best times to run this rig. Worms wash into the water naturally, and fish are already looking up expecting them. After a good rain, go bigger with your worm piece. Fish are keyed in on larger offerings washing through, and they're actively hunting rather than just browsing. Red wigglers are worth knowing about separately from nightcrawlers. They're smaller, livelier, and in cold or clear water, they often outperform the bigger worm by a wide margin. Cold water slows everything down, including nightcrawlers. A sluggish worm in 40-degree water isn't doing much. A red wiggler stays active and keeps moving when others quit. Weed edges are some of the most productive spots you'll ever cast to. Fish sit just inside the edge, using the weeds as cover, waiting for food to drift past. Don't cast into the middle of open water and wait. Open water is a cafeteria with no tables. Fish pass through, but they don't hang around. Wind-blown shorelines concentrate food. Insects, larvae, and debris pile up on the windward bank. Fish know this. Cast into the wind, not away from it. The knot connecting your hook to the line is a failure point nobody talks about. A poorly tied knot doesn't just slip, it goes at the worst possible moment. Wet your knot before you cinch it down. Dry monofilament generates friction heat when pulled tight, and that heat weakens the line right at the knot. A simple improved clinch knot is all you need here. 5 wraps, thread back through, pull tight wet. That knot holds under real pressure without overcomplicating anything. Bobber type actually matters in moving water. A round bobber catches current and drags your bait sideways. A slim pencil-style bobber cuts through it and holds position. Slip bobbers give you one big advantage over clip-on styles. You can cast them much farther without the rig tangling. For distance fishing, they're the cleaner option. After landing a fish, check your worm before recasting. A chewed up, shredded piece of bait catches nothing. Fresh bait on every cast is a habit that pays off. Drag setting on your reel matters even for panfish. Too tight and a hard-running fish snaps the line. Loose enough to give a little and you land more. Keep the rod tip up while you're fighting a fish. A low rod gives the fish more leverage and more angles to throw the hook. Up means control. Don't horse the fish straight to the surface. Let it run a little, tire itself out, then bring it in. Panfish especially will flip off a hook if rushed. Every one of these details compound. Fix the line weight, the knot, the bobber type, the timing, and suddenly the same rig you've always used starts working like it never did before. Color matters more than most people think. A bright red or orange bobber is easy to track, but in shallow clear water it can spook fish sitting just below the surface. Switch to a smaller, darker bobber in clear condition. Less surface disturbance, less shadow, less reason for a wary fish to turn around before it ever reaches your bait. Hook placement on the worm changes depending on current. In still water, threading works fine. In moving water, you want the hook closer to the middle so the worm doesn't fold and spin. Spinning bait is a problem nobody warned you about. A worm that rotates on the retrieve twists your line into a mess and looks completely unnatural to any fish watching it. If your line keeps twisting, the worm is the culprit. Re-rig it flatter against the hook shank and the spinning stop. Takes 30 seconds and saves the whole session. Scent is something bass and catfish anglers take seriously, but panfish anglers mostly ignore it. Your sunscreen, bug spray, and fuel smell transfer directly onto the bait through your hand. Rinse your hands in the lake before handling bait. Takes 5 seconds. Fish have a sense of smell that puts most mammals to shame, and foreign scent on a worm kills the bite. Retrieve speed is something people forget entirely with bobber fishing. Most just cast and sit, but a slow, occasional pull of a foot or two can trigger fish that ignored a stationary bait. You're not jigging it, just giving the worm a little life. A short pull, a pause, another pull. It's the difference between a meal sitting on the table and one walking path. Fishing the same spot for 20 minutes with zero action means the fish aren't there. Move down the bank. 10 feet can be the difference between empty water and a school of bluegill. Shadows from trees and docks concentrate fish in summer. The shade drops water temperature a few degrees and fish stack up in it. Cast into the edge of the shadow, not the open sun. Overhanging branches are worth targeting specifically. Insects fall from them constantly. Fish sit directly below waiting, and a worm dropping into that zone gets eaten fast. Depth changes on the lake bottom matter too. Where a flat bottom suddenly drops off, fish hold right on that edge. Cast to the drop, not the flat. You can find drop-offs by counting down. Cast out, count how long the bait takes to settle at different distances. Where the count jumps, the bottom dropped. That's your spot. Braid as a main line with a fluorocarbon leader is worth trying if you're fishing pressured water regularly. The braid gives sensitivity, the leader disappears near the hook where it counts. Tying braid to fluorocarbon takes a specific knot. The double uni works well here. A standard clinch knot between those two materials will slip under load and cost you fish. Rod sensitivity changes what you notice. A stiff rod deadens the feel of a light bite. A light or medium light action rod transmits every tap, every nudge, every hesitation. You don't need expensive gear for this rig to work. A $40 light spinning combo does everything a $200 setup does when you're fishing worms under a bobber. Catch and release handling affects whether that fish survives. Wet your hand before grabbing it, keep it horizontal, and get it back in the water quickly. A flop fish on dry dock often doesn't recover. If you're keeping fish, a small cooler with ice is the right move. Fish left in a bucket of warm water in summer sun deteriorate fast and taste worse for it. Noise travels through water faster than through air. Stomping on a dock, dropping a tackle box, banging the side of a boat, fish feel all of it and scatter. Move quietly. Step softly on dock. Lower gear instead of dropping it. The fish you didn't spook before your first cast are the ones you actually get a shot at. Consistency is what separates people who catch fish regularly from people who get lucky occasionally. Same rig, same habits, same attention to detail every single time out. The bobber and worm rig never stopped working. Most people just stopped working it properly. Fix the small things and the results follow. Every trip, not just the lucky one. Worm color is something almost nobody considers. Pale, washed out worms sitting in old bedding are less attractive than dark, healthy ones, and fish absolutely notice the difference. Store your worms in fresh bedding and keep the container moist. A healthy worm stays dark, firm, and active, exactly what you want dangling below that bobber. Barbed hooks hold worms dramatically better than barbless. A worm sliding down the shank mid-cast bunches at the bend and kills the presentation before it hits water. Bait holder hooks have two small barbs along the shank specifically for this. They're cheap, widely available, and solve the sliding problem completely without any extra rigging. Circle hooks are worth trying if you're catching and releasing. They tend to hook fish in the corner of the mouth rather than deep, which makes release faster and cleaner. Mealworms are an underused option most people walk right past in the bait shop. For small trout in cold, clear streams, they match the natural insect larvae fish are already eating. Bloodworms are another option worth keeping in mind for brackish or tidal freshwater. Species like perch and white bass respond to them when night crawlers get ignored. Your bobber stop matters more in moving water than people realize. A stop that slips under current pressure lets the bobber creep down the line and ruins your depth setting mid-session. Rubber bobber stops outlast the peg-style ones by a wide margin. They grip the line without damaging it and hold position through repeated casts without needing adjustment. Walleye respond to worms under a bobber more than most people expect. They're a species with a reputation for difficulty, but a slow-drifted worm at the right depth catches them consistent. For walleye specifically, longer worm sections work better, closer to the full crawler. They're bigger fish hunting bigger meals, and a small piece just doesn't register the same way. Carp are catchable on this rig too, though they require more patience. They mouth bait cautiously before committing, so the bobber will dance for a long time before it goes under hard. A long rod helps when fishing from a bank with vegetation behind you. More rod length means a wider casting arc and fewer worms lost to branches on the backswing. Telescoping rods are genuinely practical for bank fishing in tight spots. They collapse small enough to carry through brush and extend to a useful length once you reach the water. The first fish a kid catches on a bobber and worm is rarely forgotten. That moment, the bobber going under, the rod bending, is what creates anglers, not gear or technique. That's the real reason this rig has lasted. It's not the simplest option, it's the most honest one. The fish either want it or they don't, and you learn to read which is which. Every adjustment covered here. Depth, hook size, worm length, line weight is really just about removing the reasons a fish might say no. You're eliminating excuses one at a time. The rig itself never needed fixing. What needed fixing was the assumption that throwing it out there was enough. Presentation is the whole game, and it always has been. Fish the structure, match the depth, keep the bait alive, and wait for the real bite. Those 4 things done consistently will outperform any fancy lure on most days. The anglers who catch fish regularly aren't using secret gear. They're just not making the small mistakes that quietly add up to an empty bucket by the end of the day. Every trip teaches you something if you're paying attention. A missed bite tells you the depth is off. A worm that comes back shredded tells you fish are there, but the hook is wrong. The water is always giving you information. Most people just aren't reading. A still bobber in the wrong spot isn't bad luck. It's a message telling you to move. This rig works in farm ponds, city park lakes, mountain streams, and tidal backwaters. The species change, the depth changes, the fundamentals don't. That's what makes it worth mastering. If any of this changed how you fish, share it with someone who's still making the mistake. And subscribe, there's a lot more water to cover.